we go. Fantastic. Well, croeso mawr, pawb. Massive welcome, everyone. So yeah, for those of you that maybe don't know me, my name's Alan. So I co-lead Gloi with Rachel, who was leading worship this morning, having planted 7.5 years ago, really, or kind of moved 7.5 years ago, planted 6.5 years ago, really. And so it's great to see you. It's great to see new faces again this morning. And today is our final installment of our Vision series with this Resource Sunday. So after the last 3 weeks, where we've delved deeper into our mission statement to dilyn Iesu, follow Jesus, adeiladu cymuned, building community, and carry on loving Anglesey, we're finishing with some more practical insights into how we plan to actually resource all of this, because we've shared quite a lot. We didn't actually even manage to get through everything, but how the heck are we going to make all this happen? And of course, resource comes in many forms, doesn't it? Like time, skill, items of kit, and access to physical spaces, like this. It is all part of resource. And it is all very important and interwoven into the vision and activity of church. But of course, resource also means money. And today, I will be spending a bit more time outlining the financial elements of our resource to ensure that we are open and accountable with our budget and the way that we spend people's giving. So I know that some of you will probably be sat there going, oh no, money. Why does the church have to talk about money from the front? Maybe past poor examples of this, personal relationships to money. Maybe you're new and you're thinking, oh, here we go, week 2, literally, week 2, and they're already asking for money. But please don't think that. Like, as a church, if anything, I personally think that we fall way short of sharing what healthy relationships with money and finance are. In fact, to a point where really we only spend one Sunday a year, and this is it, talking about money and finance and giving, and actually kind of standing at the front unashamedly being like, look guys, this is our budget, this is our shortfall. Can we see this closed? We don't do this very often. So please do, if you are new, hear this in the full round of, you won't probably hear this for another year, apart from a little notice, or maybe at the welcome meal, it is one very quick slide of, and this is another part to be part of Gloi. So just have that in frame as I talk about it. But hopefully, today, whatever your thoughts and feelings are, whether you're new or not, hopefully that this will be a kind of new approach to the church, talking about money. If you're not new, maybe this won't surprise you and you've seen this before, but if you are, hopefully this will be a really healthy way of the church talking about finances and the way that we manage and steward our own personal finance. So, before we get into some of the detail of our resource, let's just pause and gain a quick biblical perspective on giving, shall we? So, money in the Bible has a huge amount to say about money. In fact, 16 of 38 parables told by Jesus were concerned with how to handle money and possessions. 42% of the parables Jesus shared involved money and possessions. In the Gospels, 1 in every 10 verses, so 288 in all, deal directly with the subject of money. The Bible offers 500 verses on prayer, because it's important, prayer is important, less than 500 verses on faith, but faith is important, but more than 2,000 verses to do with money and possessions. Money and possessions is a massive topic in the Bible. Can you imagine if we as a church, like after we saying we basically talk about this 1 in every 52 weeks, imagine if I stood up and said, our new teaching series is 42% of the time we are going to talk about money. Yeah. But clearly Jesus and the writers of the Bible knew that it is a core issue to the human nature. Since Adam and Eve in the garden, throughout history and still so prevalent, if not more today. We as a human race have always strived for more, been drawn to and coveted money and possessions. So if we are truly and passionately in pursuit of living a life for Jesus, if we really want to see the kingdom of heaven break out here on Ynysmôn and beyond, we need to get our hearts right with money and possessions, with a biblical view of our finances. It demands an openness around finance and money, which really isn't a cultural norm, is it? But you guys are here at Gweledigaeth. This isn't a cultural norm. We don't skirt around the tough issues. We don't settle for mediocrity, but we pursue growth through a willingness to learn. Always being willing to be changed and grow. Not thinking, oh, we've made it. We've done this for a while now. Or actually, I'm comfortable just here at this low level. But we always want to see growth in all areas. And money, whether we like it or not, has a pull on our thoughts, desires, and our time. So, a really quick, simple, 3-point take-home biblical view of finance is this. Number 1, everything is God's and we steward it. Hold on a minute, sorry, just before I get into this, I've been waiting for this moment. All right, Gwels, see you later, guys. Just talking about, no. They did come up to me beforehand and say, we're going at 11:30. And I was like, oh yeah, because it's the giving talk today. And they were like, is it? Oh no, they have got to go to work. Go well. Just before everyone thinks, oh, blimey. They've snuck out as soon as you start to talk about money. Good. Anyway, biblical approach to money. Right, okay, back in it. So number 1, everything is God's and we steward it. The Bible is clear that the earth and everything in it is God's and we are called to steward it well. From creation in Genesis 2 throughout history to today, when God's people approach everything as God's, that he's entrusted us to manage and steward well, things blossom and are blessed abundantly. When we take control and see it as ours, and we box it off, whether that's our finance, our possessions, our time, our family, whatever it is, in our discipleship journey, it will become a root cause of decay that will spread throughout then the whole of our lives. We are called to steward everything that God has given us, not box it off, but to steward it well. Number 2, you can't serve God and money. So you might have heard in Matthew 6:24 before it says, no one can serve 2 masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Now, this passage has wrongly been interpreted in the past as like money is just evil. It is the worst thing you can do. You've either got a choice between engaging with money or engaging with God. And if we actually thought that, that would go against point 1 of actually God has given us money to steward well. Yeah? So it's not that it is evil in any way. However, it does become an issue, and what Matthew is saying here and what the writers of the Bible are saying here is, who is your master? Who do you take your first call from? Is it what God is saying to you and the call on your life to engage in community, to give freely, or is it to pursue money? Now, some of us in the room will actually have a calling on our life, a God-given gift to go and make money. You will be entrepreneurial, kingdom-minded people that actually have been given a shrewd knowledge of finance and how to grow it and make it and to build more money. It's great. It's a gift. We need more of that in the church. It's fantastic. But the challenge comes is, when does that become too much and become just a fixation that is all we are going after? For example, how much time do you spend thinking about God, and how much time do you think about money and possessions? Does this balance reflect the priorities in your life? Francis Bacon is credited as once saying, money is a great servant, but a bad master. It's exactly it, isn't it? If money serves us and we are its master, it can lead to great things in this world. But if we become the servant to money and it becomes our master and controls us, then how can we openly serve God with everything that we have? Okay, then number 3, we are called to excel in giving. 2 Corinthians 8 verse 7 says this, and I really like this. I'm going to say, I think this was written quite sarcastically. So I'm going to read it sarcastically because I quite like it. But since you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in the love we have kindled in you, see that you also excel in the grace of giving. I just love that. I could just imagine, so, oh yeah, because you guys have got it all sorted, aren't you fantastic? You have so much faith, yet you still have to excel in this grace of giving. Because giving and generosity is as much a spiritual discipline, a catalyst for faith, as worship, as prayer, and as fasting all are too. As we give, it releases an emotional and spiritual hold that money can have on our hearts. It forces us to say, no, God, I trust you with everything that I have, with all of my finances and provision. It turns money from always being something that we grab and hold on to into something of money being our servant that we can freely give as it freely comes. It can be something that we can use for good, be that to live or to give, and so into building the kingdom of heaven. So we are called to excel in all things, including our approach to money and our giving. So we go, everything is God's and we steward. You cannot serve both God and money, and we are called to excel in giving. And I believe that if we as individuals and a collective community of Jesus followers want to pursue more of him, to learn, grow, and see breakthrough in our lives and the lives of those around us, we must be open and willing to stop boxing off money from God, but to get this biblical approach. Matthew 6:21 says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be." Or as the Message paraphrase puts it, the place where your treasure is the place where you will most want to be and will end up being. Where is your treasure? Where do you most want to be? And do they lead to the same end? Right. So that's a whistle-stop tour of biblical giving. There is obviously huge amounts more that could go into, but hopefully that just sets a framework for kind of where kind of this has been approached from a discipleship point of view. So now onto some of the practicalities of where opportunities might be for us to engage in the resource of Capel Gweledigaeth. So for the church to enable our vision to flourish in a suitable and safe environment, we need to ensure that our organizational health and our resources available match our increasing needs. And put simply, we need to be operationally healthy financially to keep going. But importantly, honor and make the most of people's sacrificial giving that they have entrusted us with. So this time last year, it wasn't actually me, it was Jan and Phil. They stood and they shared that we had set a budget that had a £17,500 faith gap. So what we expected to spend in 2024 against what kind of our giving suggested we would have come in, we had a £17,500 faith gap, our biggest faith gap that we'd ever had. Yet since then, we've seen practically outwork. Our income has actually exceeded our outgoings. So as you can see, over 2024, what we've actually seen, where we started thinking we might have £17,000 less in the bank account, we've actually ended the year with £8,000 more in the bank account. And there are two main reasons for this. Next slide, I think, Steph. Yeah, there are two main things. One, we had some incredibly generous one-off gifts. We have people that had increased their regular giving as well. And we did have a little bit of grant success that resulted in our income being quite a bit more than we expected at the start of the year, which is amazing. And then secondly, our outgoings were lower than we expected, largely because we had budgeted to move building from the football club from around April last year. But as you well know, we couldn't get anywhere. No one would allow us to use any of the space. So we'd budgeted for more kind of capital outgoing than we expected. We've basically saved on that. We did then actually spend some of that money on, like we spent more on the fun day, and we really kind of went big on the fun day last year. We spent, the rooted day was a new thing last year that we hadn't got in the original budget. And of course, with actually getting to move here last December, we needed to buy a church van to be able to move stuff around. So we managed to buy a van with that and still end up with a positive at the end of the year. Right, so that was last year. So diolch yn fawr, thank you for all of those that have sacrificially given over this last year into all that has happened at Capel Gweledi. Should we just have a round of applause first of all? Because that is incredible, isn't it? That is absolutely amazing. Thank you, Jesus. Right, next slide. So 2025. So as we've shared in different parts of the Vision series, we've planned for more growth, recognizing that our events are now bigger. Like there are over 90 people in here today, which we didn't have this time last year. Recognizing that our resource needs are now higher. Our missional activities, so Make Lunch, Little Beacons, are bigger. And like I shared last week, so Kirsty's job role, we would love to give Kirsty just a little bit more time each week to be able to enable the better coordination of Make Lunch and Little Beacons as that grows and there's more kind of support put around that. We have the weekend away this year. We have the Rooted Day that we're going to continue with kind of being an annual thing in the autumn, a one day as all getting together to focus on discipleship. And then a range of other activities to help us to follow Jesus closer, build community deeper, and to love Anglesey and beyond wider. And of course, our Sunday venue costs have now increased quite significantly compared to the football club. So to be here in M-Spark each Sunday, we now hire a storage unit just in Gyfer as well, because we had storage at the football club too, which we now don't have. We have a van to transport equipment around. Means that all of our costs of just putting on Sunday gatherings have increased quite substantially, nearly fourfold increase, really. But it's all exciting. It's all really good stuff. And we work hard to get the best deals and to ensure that every bit of our budget is used as the most effectively as possible. Like, just look at the staff team. Kirsty sat up there. She will be nodding to say, yes, Alan does crack the whip to make sure that we make the most of everything we have. It is true. But what does it mean for this year? Next slide, Steph. So, with our current average regular giving, so that's kind of based on the last 3 months of what we've had come in, what we expect to get each month from people's regular giving. So assuming that that continued as it did throughout this year, we'd expect an income of £63,100. Those eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that last year's income was higher than we're projecting we're going to get in this year. But that's because of the one-off gifts we had last year and some grant funding that we just can't bank on this year, which kind of highlights one of the key things around regular standing order giving towards church helps us budget much easier. One-off gifts, fantastic. Like, thank you so much. And if that is where your financial position is, or the way that you feel God is like calling you to sow into this, is brilliant. But as we set a budget, we have to kind of go, well, what do we expect just from what comes in each month? Because we can't expect that somebody's going to turn up with a check for £5,000 or £10,000 or £50,000 next week. We can't budget for that. So that is where we are at. And also gift aid as well, with regular giving and one-off giving. If you are a UK taxpayer, like, gift aid is massively important to us. So if you do pay tax on your giving, please do sign the declaration, which is either online if you give online, or it's just simply an email to the giving email address or to myself so that we can claim gift aid on that, which is 25%. So for every £10 you give, we can claim another £2.50 just for some paperwork. If you pay tax, that is. Right, where are I? So, budgeting in all of this resource, budgeting all the resources, the growth and the changes that we anticipate making this year means that our expected outgoing, so what we have budgeted to spend this year, what we plan to spend with staff costs, venue hire, all of that sort of stuff, we anticipate spending around £96,100 this year, which gives us a shortfall in our budget of £33,000. So however, because we did have some money saved from last year, that £8,000 extra, we do have some money in the bank account, we've kind of decided, instead of just saying we need to cover 33 grand this year or the lights are being switched off, we've going to reinvest £10,000 of that into this next year's budget, which means that basically we wanted to be able to raise our budget by another £10,000 more, and so this was a way to do it. And so we're going to put £10,000 back into that. So in practice, we have a £23,000 faith gap. Notice we call it faith gap. Faith gap is basically just because we want to see that covered over this year. And that would be amazing. I'd love to see it covered today. But over this year, we would love to see that £23,000 faith gap covered during 2025 to ensure that we are financially healthy as an organisation. So as it says on the back of the vision booklet, which if you've not grabbed one, there's some on the welcome desk, we as a charity have to keep £22,000 in reserves. So that's 3 months of our core operating costs, so staff pay, kind of venue hire and all that sort of stuff. So we keep 3 months operating costs. That's the Charity Commission demand that. We're fortunate to have £45,000 set aside as a seed fund for a future long-term building of our own that we can have, that we've not actually talked much about in this vision series. I realised yesterday when I was finishing prepping the kind of idea of, we've not really talked about it. But that is a huge part of something that we're going into, because we are actively seeking to find a new home, which I know we've been here 2 months, but we're actively seeking to find a new home that we can inhabit and love Anglesey throughout the week. Something that we can really bring all of our different things, our make lunch, our little beacons, Sunday gatherings, our worship evenings, our prayer times, the things that we could open up to do, whether it be a coffee shop or Coffee Cymraeg to meet there regularly, whatever it looks like. There are so many things we would love to do with a venue and a space. Now, MSPART, this is a beautiful building. We're really pleased with this. It's fantastic. God has been so gracious to actually let us have access to this space. Yet 2 things are going to happen if we don't act quickly. One, we are very aware that this is quite a precarious situation here. This is a science park that shouldn't allow a church to meet on a Sunday morning. By the grace of God, they have, but we just pray that that continues. But number 2, there are no more chairs we can put out. So we are actively, pretty much top of my to-do list really is to continue really pushing and seeking for, okay, what does it look like for a future kingdom venue, this space we can utilize. Now, we've got £45,000 set aside in the church bank account from years of people's generous giving that has meant that we as a church are on a very strong financial footing. £45,000 doesn't quite build that space. But it's a great starting point, isn't it? So thank you for that. And that's why we are setting that aside, why we're kind of coming up with a £23,000 faith gap, although we have more than £23,000 in the bank account. That is because we know that if there was no more giving, we can still pay people. We can still meet for another year without trouble. That is true. Yet, our vision over the next year and years is to see this kingdom venue established. And now we don't know what that looks like. It seems like as though there are so many challenges and obstacles that money is the least of my worries about it. But We are exploring it. We're excited by it. We are very aware that it potentially could lead to us needing to build something from scratch, like finding a plot of land and building something, which means that it is 2, 3, 4 years away, which is why we need to act now. We're praying something else will come up and that we'll be able to move into that space sooner, but we'll see. I'll communicate more about that as things come, but just so that you're aware why we have this money held in savings and why actually we would love to see an overflow of giving. That would mean that we could add and begin to build that pot that just brings us closer and closer to that opportunity to really see this vision come to fruition. Okay, next slide. So, a summary of the few key points from our budget this year. Please do consider giving regularly as compared to one-off gifts. Like last year, we saw some amazing sacrificial giving, but in reality, our expected income hasn't gone up that much from last year. And so it made planning a budget quite challenging. But yeah, obviously that is for you to seek God on. Secondly, key changes in our costs include things like supporting Kirsty with more time and just being here in MSpark. Our new venue-related costs are much higher, and we are actively exploring this future kingdom venue. Realistically, this is probably still some way off, but we are pursuing that. So right, practically, how to give to Capital Lady. So the website's the easiest way. You can set up a one-off gift or a regular gift through the online form. So if you go to lighthousechurchanglesey.org/giving or capitalladymorn.org/Rhoi, then there is a form there where you can fill in. It all connects through to Church Suite, which is what we communicate and kind of keep the teams up to date with, which is really helpful. And there's an online declaration for gift aid on there as well. So you can do that. Or you can obviously set up a standing order or a one-off gift direct into the bank account. The details are on the screen. And if there are any questions or anything you want to raise or you want more information on something, we are really open and accountable with what we have and how we use it, how we budget, what that looks like, how we agree it with our trustees. Didn't want to go into that. I didn't want to turn this into an AGM as compared to a vision talk. So I haven't included all that, but I'm happy to share that. We've got a dedicated email address, giving@capitalladymorn.org, or you can just email me directly, alan@capitalladymorn.org. If you want the bank details or you want to ask a question or you want anything to do with money, then there is that there too. So practically, that is how we can give. There is always a giving box out on the welcome desk, a little wooden box. If you would prefer to give by cash each week, that is absolutely fine. And basically, our ask in our heart today is just to ask you to come before God and say, okay, God, what's my role in this? Have I been closed off with money in my life? Is there something there, or what is my role to see this come to fruition? Actually, is there something that I need to begin to do or change? Or maybe you need to consider your current giving and just go, okay, God, start the new year. What does that look like for me? How do I do that? And that's just our ask. There's no push. There's no kind of big thing around, you've got to do this, otherwise this. Absolutely not. This is between you and God. It is an act of worship. And that is basically where we will leave it. Well, I would say we'd leave it, but our worship leaders just walked out, probably because our child just wet himself. So yeah. So, I'll play for time. Right, let's turn it into an AGM. So, there's some things that... No. Fantastic. Right. Well, let's pray, shall we? Let's pray. Oh, dear.